Greetings, friends. My name is John Edward LaMuth. I have my laser pointer here. I can highlight different things that I'm talking about here. And for the record, I should read the title again of my dissertation. It's Behavioral Solutions for Advancing Global Peace and Harmony. And this is under the aegis of the American University of Sovereign Nations, which has graciously permitted me to pursue my doctorate degree. And I think the title kind of sums it up pretty good. I'm going to try and there's been a lot of talk about the conflict between science and religion. And how they're mutually exclusive. But what I'm aiming to prove is that you can use behavioral psychology as a foundation for my hierarchy of the virtues and the values and the ideals. And that way, you take advantage of the secular focus on science and technology and actually apply it to these questions, philosophical questions that have been long discussed before they even recognized the word science. So this could really help out as far as letting people know that knowledge is power, and if people can understand their inner workings and as it relates to science and the technology that everybody's carrying in their pocket, I think this could really have the potential for improving, peace and harmony in the world. In fact, at my highest transcendental level, I include peace and harmony. So, and then scrolling down here, here's the abstract here. I should probably read the whole thing, but no.
You read the whole thing.
Huh?
You read the whole thing.
Okay, starting with the abstract. Our modern secular age has primarily favored the trend towards moral relativism, as opposed to moral absolutism underpinning organized religion. Ideally, a behavioral science foundation linking these two perspectives should prove exceedingly beneficial, invoking instinctual principles shared in common by humanity as well as the rest of the animal kingdom, at least the ones that live in social groups, more or less. When expanded to include the higher order class of human cultural values that have developed in a cultural sense, the affiliated traditional groupings of virtues and values rightfully enter the picture. Here, a radically new model of motivated behavior is currently proposed, one that melds modern behavioral psychology with the long-standing traditions underlying value ethics. And this trend encompasses the personal, group, universal, humanitarian, and transcendental realms of inquiry. It's like a five-level hierarchy. And this synthesis permits a grand unified theory of ethically motivated behavior organized as a 10-level hierarchy, because it's also comprised of authority and follower roles. The follower follows the authority in my definition. So you have actually a 10-level hierarchy. And in terms of this overarching behavioral foundation, the moral commonalities across all religious traditions are emphasized, encouraging new inroads into religious tolerance. And this can further serve a secular constituency where such moral issues have typically been downplayed, especially in the United States with this separation of church and state. This has been downplayed due to well-meaning attempts to avoid religious favoritism towards one religion or another. Okay, and this self-same system further serves as a value adjunct to the major religions without favoring any one of them, whereby encouraging the potential for peaceful coexistence. Scrolling down here, particularly because it does not preclude the existence of a top-down pattern of a supernatural influence as well, which I will show later on through the mystical value. Mystical values is the highest nameable range, which is ecstasy, bliss, joy, and harmony. Very abstract terms, but there is a potential for even going beyond that, and two-way traffic from the top down as well. Consequently, this grand-scale synthesis potentially amounts to the best of all possible worlds, encouraging an ethical revival in the secular world, which we all see has most of the power nowadays, as well as the potential for an even greater degree of spiritual cooperation and tolerance amongst all the religions. So that's basically the overview of what I'm going to attempt to propose here, and I know it seems pretty ambitious, but I'll go through the table of contents and show you how I'm going to arrive at maybe this the schedule on chapter 1. I got talk about the basic hierarchy. Then down in chapter 2, I go into all the behavioral dynamics, and this enters in at the personal level. But it continues on up. You can see how the influence continues up. Chapter 3, we got the group realm. That's the level above the personal. That's where most of us live in our social constructs. And then chapter 4, we got the spiritual and what I call the universal, which is the group of all groups. This is like a set theory. You can show all this with Venn diagrams. And then going to chapter 5 here, we got the humanitarian realm, which is not only the universal, but it's the universal realm over all ages and times. Like Albert Einstein, he distinguished the 3 dimensions of space, and then his 4th dimension was the dimension of time, space-time. And it's no coincidence that this enters in right at the 4th level of the ethical hierarchy here. You can see these terms are getting more and more abstract. Here finally we get a transcendental perspective. And I'll explain my criterion for that. But you see these highest virtues and values, including peace, which is in my title, love, tranquility, equality, and then the mystical values I was saying, ecstasy, bliss, joy, and then harmony is there. So, and then chapter 7, I go on to this crucial issue of the accessory virtues and values, because the perspectives of I have my own I perspective and your you perspective, but you're entitled to make your own perspectives back on that communication. So it's I, then you, then I, and this gives a complete empathic array of perspectives, so that nobody's perspective is left out, and if everybody understands the perspective of another, then peace and harmony are much more likely to occur. And then these are all, I go into detail on all these accessory versions. Jumping ahead to chapter 8, I talked about the general unifying themes, where each grouping of virtues and values has its own theme. So like, say the cardinal virtues, prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. They have their own theme of utilitarianism, the greatest good for the greatest number. Like in Plato's city-state, ideal city-state in the classical period. And I will be showing later that each of these has their own theme. And then I also, the themes are the second order level. I also have a third order level above that, which really complements and validates all three levels. And this is the notion of the phantom and the fantasy dialogues. The phantom dialogue is when one person is absent from the conversation, and it's like a monologue or like letter writing, that kind of thing. And then the fantasy dialogue is when both parties are absent, or what I would say fictitious. And this has a lot to do with, these are all themes taken from the literary tradition. I describe each of these in a separate section. Then chapter 10, I go into the overall applications. This is probably what everybody is probably most interested in. And but I show how my system fits in with the whole system of ethical inquiry up to now. And then the last chapter is just a short concluding chapter where I sum up on and try and sum up everything that's gone before, and then even suggest directions for further research. So here we go. I launch off the introduction here. I talk about some of what I said in the abstract. Talk about the moral relativism. Oh yeah, chapter section 1.1, the global problem here. So if you want to follow along with your copy that was sent, and this is on page 13, starts on page 13, because of all the tables in front there. So we're on, I said section 1.1 on page 13, and I know moral absolutism is very popular on the academic campuses, and religious dogmatism has some advantages, and moral absolutism that has the scientific advantage. And I suggest here that there's a way to bring science and religion together in an ethical sense, so that we can have moral certainty even under complex circumstances. We're talking about self-driving cars and everything. This is a way to look at the technology and give it a moral certainty, or at least greater certainty. There's no such thing as the absolute certainty, only that's reserved for God, the concept of God. So moving on from page 13, we go over to talk about a planetary system of ethics. And this is where everyone, I know this has only been developed in English yet, but there's translations that can be made, so this will be applicable to everyone's lives. And from the cross-section of minds that have signed in, I would say that there's a good chance that the word can get out on this. So I talk about the personal, group, universal, humanitarian, and transcendental realms. This is on page 14, and This is kind of a motivation solution. And talk about the authority of follower roles, and the follower essentially follows the authority. Authority is usually the active figure in the behavioral condition sequence, and the follower is the party that is expected to act on that conditioning. So moving on to page 15, here we got the master diagram here shown in a compact form, so you can see the increase in abstraction as you go down. So you got glory, providence, grace, tranquility, or honor, liberty, free will, equality, integrity, austerity, equanimity, peace. Notice here, peace and harmony. They're right on the top cusp there. And so scrolling down then again, I also have another diagram coming up that shows the names of all these groupings. But this shows them the real hierarchy of abstraction. Okay, so move down here. It's section 1, 2, the motivational matrix. Here I describe the different groupings of the virtues and the values, and these are the ones that fit into that diagram, including the cardinal virtues, theological virtues, classical Greek values. These are all been since classical Greek time, when Plato and Aristotle derived these, and it's great that we can finally, instead of looking at them individually, finally put them into an overall context where all the relationships are apparent, and this really increases understanding. So moving from page 15 to 16 here, this is basically what I'm getting ahead of myself here, talking about the hierarchy of meta perspectives.
Read
This cohesive hierarchy of virtues, values, and ideas proves particularly comprehensive in scope, accounting for virtually every ethical theme celebrated within the Western ethical tradition. And it's made possible through the hierarchy of meta perspectives, which is a term from communication theory, where this is how I see you seeing me, and then you can have a meta perspective. This is how I see you seeing me seeing you, and you can keep going up that way, and up to actually the highest nameable range, which is the 10th level hierarchy. And even though the mind is able to focus, you don't have to keep all 10 levels in your mind. You just focus on the immediately appropriate ones. Okay, so talk about a personal, and you have the group context.
Read the sentences so we see it.
Yes. In addition to the one-to-one style of personal interaction, the individual is further incorporated into a broad range of contexts: work, family, country, etc., which is the group realm, and as well as some all-encompassing universal contexts, which could be the religion which claims authority over all of mankind. Could be like the United Nations, which claims authority over the globe. NGOs, all of those. So you got the basic personal, group, and spiritual. And I talk about philosopher Immanuel Kant. He also subdivides his category of quantity into unity, the unit set, plurality, the group set, and totality, the universal set, the set of all sets. And then down on page 17, at the top, it says, interaction between individuals do not exist solely in a vacuum, but rather specialize in the authority and follower roles. And the way I deduce this is from the conditioning theory, where conditioning is a two-stage process. So the authority initiates the conditions process, and then the follower knows how they are supposed to respond in the future to that. And eventually, their future role becomes immediately actualized in the present, and then the cycle continues. That's like they call a recursive cycle. And down here we talk about the personal authority level, how that develops, and then towards the bottom of the page we got the group authority. Talk about the interplay of the management is kind of like the authority role, and the group representative, they're like the union, the labor pool, where they organize as a union collective, and that's how the rank and file, they balance the power with the authority figures. So you see how the follower leads the leader as much as the leader leads the follower. And you see this all the time in labor and management disputes and resolution on this. So going down to page 18 here, this is a rather long section, but it's then we talk about the universal authority. It's a third order style of set hierarchy, and in the past, in the ancient past, the leaders would claim to have a mandate from God, or maybe a Messiah figure or something like that, and that's how they derived their authority over, so that people would voluntarily follow them. And like I said, the king could inspire his troops, just using the name of a god of war, like Ares, or there's a lot of, I go into a lot of precedents on this later in that chapter. So going down to section 1.3 on page 18, we got the master groupings, virtues and values. This is a diagram I term the motivational matrix for now, because it is a matrix, and every term has a specific location in the matrix, and it's wouldn't make any sense to put it anywhere else. So here's the master diagram coming up on page 19 here, and this shows this more spread out version of the compact table originally, and this shows the different levels: personal, group, spiritual, and the groupings of virtues and values listed there. This third level here, glory, honor, dignity, integrity, this launches the group level, and this was the first innovation. I first had these first two levels, and then I noticed that this could be a higher meta perspective on these. They definitely all have a group flavor. And then I remember that there was a cardinal virtues here, and so I had this basic four, and then from there on I just kept adding levels down there. I knew there's other groupings of virtues, theological virtues, classical Greek values. And so ultimately expanded out to 10 levels, and these numbers here, this is a coding system. I've kind of systematic coding system that I've devised. The technical details on that are not that important, because I use them to there's a darker realm of the vices also, which contrasts. So for peace, you got war. For love, you have hate. For goodness, you have evil and stuff. So there's a whole parallel hierarchy there. That's why I have these coded to keep track of all of that, which I estimate to run over 1,000 terms in total. But in this dissertation, I had to limit it all just to the positive realm, the major virtues, values, and ideals. In fact, if you say, hey, there's other virtues like this, out there. I do account though. I call those the lesser virtues, where there's at least as many or more lesser virtues. But that said, that's a project for more of a book-like kind of thing here. So going from figure 1, we're going to scroll down again. I take the whole page just about. We're going on to page 20 here. And then I bring in the humanitarian and the transcendentals. I kind of mentioned that earlier. The humanitarian brings in historical time, people that are concerned with ritual and tradition from the past, or sustainability and conservation for future generations. So this is what the big policymakers are concerned about, the long-term picture. And then this very sense of the power of abstraction ultimately serves as the basis for one final innovation, namely the crowning transcendental level. It regains the upper hand by transcending the routine sense of concreteness shared in common by all the lower levels. And we see that scrolling down to page 21 in the corresponding listing of terms there. Peace, love, tranquility, and equality, like I was talking about. I think that's a little further down here. Well, you saw it in the diagram, the mystical values: ecstasy, bliss, joy, and harmony. So in section 1.4, I try and break it down into show how the personal foundations. It has behavioral overtones, which I can match up and show how this really represents a two-stage behavioral conditioning sequence. And like I said, this just sets you up for the second chapter, which I really go into the details on it. Go into 22 there. I give a little section on the sequence of authority roles. I start with the group and then go down to the spiritual on the bottom. Let's keep scrolling here. And just follow the pointer like then the humanitarian level and the transcendental level. This is a very brief overview. Each of these levels is going to assign its own chapter, later. Now we're still on chapter 1. And then the follower traditions here, I do the same kind of treatment. Personal, group, spiritual, then humanitarian, and the transcendental gets into the mystical values in terms of the follower roles. That's this very highest level. They're virtually almost synonyms of each other. They're blending kind of meanings. They're so abstract. So moving down, we'll get out of this chapter then. Here I talk about the motivational matrix on 1.7. I refer back to that figure 1, that original diagram.
Can you read this paragraph?
As depicted, the left-hand column of terms specify the authority roles in that diagram, and then all 5 terms share an immediate active focus based on acknowledgement of past achievements. And then the upper right-hand quadrants are based on negative reinforcement, which I will talk about soon. And this sequence is leniency, justice, hope, truth, bliss. And then scrolling down further, this grand scale organization is a major selling point. This has got like perfect symmetry and cohesiveness that's far too intricate to have arisen solely by chance. Only by looking at the big picture and synthesizing everything together, that permits the real exciting applications, which I talk about here briefly as a segue. The global ethical introductions. I talk about our legal systems, economic cooperation, which some of you are working on, and talk about politics even, how partisan politics can get in the way by narrowing the focus too much and not looking at the long-term picture here. So, politics, economics, the legal, those are the three branches, what's really left. So, and then finally here I give a little introduction about conditioning theory. B.F. Skinner, he tried something similar to this in his book Beyond Freedom and Dignity. I read this when I was in college since '71, and he tried to fit them into a behavioral context. And he succeeded, but it's nothing as comprehensive or gets to the degree of abstraction like this system does. So anyway, this segues us into, we're on page 28, 29, and then 30, we're going in chapter 2 and section 2.1. We have conditioning in a natural setting, where I talk about some of the big names in behaviorism: Pavlov, B.F. Skinner. B.F. Skinner developed a radical form called operant conditioning from the more basic instrumental conditioning. According to Skinner, goal-seeking behaviors, they operate on the environment to produce reinforcement, hence the operant sense of the term. And he distinguishes two distinct forms, which accounts for the four-part groupings. And that's positive and negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement targets, refers to rewarding aspects within the environment, as through solicitous types of behavior. Reinforcement doesn't come to you, the water and the food and all that. You have to go out and get it, as we all know. So then scrolling down to page 31, we talk about negative reinforcement. Some people conflate that with punishment, but that's negative. It's reinforcing. You withhold punishment, and that is reinforcing to the organism. So I got an example. The bear cub, he might jump into a lake to avoid the unpleasant consequences of a hot summer day, or a swarm of angry bees for that matter. So we're on a balancing act. We're like I said, if we were in nature still, we'd be fleeing from predators, stepping around pitfalls. It's really the most crucial thing as far as. And then the positive reinforcement keeps our energy levels up and our homeostasis enforced here. So we talk about Skinner, his experiments, and then we have conditioning in a social setting. I talk about certain animal parallels. Scrolling down, we have. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, We have grooming behaviors, you see, and also submissive behaviors, like in the wolf pack, where the submissive wolf bares his throat in order to submit to the leader. And then in a human society, we have secondary reinforcers: money, power, praise, commendation. These are what we like to work for, and these secondary reinforcers can be exchanged for any of the positive reinforcers. Food, shelter, all of that. So it's all instinctual, it's all biological, no matter what, no matter how much they want to minimize it, you know. So going on to page 32, see the Protestant work ethic: no work, no pay. And then I talk about the submissive behaviors: serving to terminate the conflict well ahead of any permanent damage. And like I said, even in the primate troop, these amounts to crouching appeasement postures, or waving the white flag for the humans. So this is the dichotomy between positive and negative reinforcement. It's just a real key feature here. And then when you further multiply that by the two-stage process of the conditioned interaction, where you get the authority, then the follower acting, that accounts for my whole four-part pattern of virtues and values at the higher levels. So let's scroll down here to here we're talking about the human connection. And this basically what we all know basically in our hearts, you know, that how society works and how we all have to contribute to making the world a better place and supporting that supporting the role of cooperation, economic cooperation. So, what time are we on now?
You find maybe we'll go to the end of chapter 2 and have some discussion.
Okay. So rolling down here, I got some nice diagrams in here. Here I talk about conditioning as a two-stage process, and this diagram is really going to bring it all into focus here. Let's scroll down just further to the area. Here's a diagram coming up. This is a whole schematic that I've developed in
page 35.
Page 35. This shows the past, the present, and the future in this diagram. Like I said, you have precedents from the past, and on that basis, you derive the current conditioned interaction, where X represents the procurement of reinforcement, and Y demonstrates the eventual bestowal of reinforcement. And here we have the terms. These look like in procurement and fashion: solicitous, submissiveness, and then these are the reinforcing roles: approval, leniency. And here we see that the reason we got these wedges here is because time increases as its distance from the present. So X is in the present authority role, and Y is in the follower role, which is the potential behavior that is expected. It might occur pretty close, immediately even, or it could be delayed. You know, so the boss might wait to the appropriate time before giving reinforcement. So mankind's use of long-term time dimensions and everything permits that. And then going down to stage B here in figure 2, we have where time shifts one level into the past. So here now Y goes down, comes into the present. So reinforcement now is actually occurring, which is based on previous cycles in the past, which serve as a model for this. And then the Y, which is the personal authority role, this has a behavioral reinforcement overtones. I desire your services, or I worry about your acting submissively. And then this reinforcement is meant to encourage these kind of behaviors in the future from the follower, which is aspiration and compliance. And these are, like I said, these are the procurement roles. And then if you phase shift this one step further in the past, then you have you come back to this kind of diagram up here again. So it just builds in a seamless fashion called recursive in recursive communication in communication theory. And this is figure 2, the two-stage schematic for operant conditioning. And this is also be considered instrumental conditioning. Instrumental is gaining rewards also. So let's scroll down. This really all you need to know as far as the behavior. I spell it out into long in 2.4. I give the introspective terminology. Those are the diagrams. Why I picked those exact terms. And then scrolling down here, I call it the class of ego states. And the ego states are desire and worries, solicitousness, submissiveness, and then the also this leads to find the other. This future-directed realm is what I term, scrolling down here, the alter ego states, where my ego is in your meta perspective, so that's considered to be an alter ego. And these also have their complementary terms, namely aspiration, desire in anticipation of aspiring treatment, or worrisome leniency in expectation of compliant treatment. So we see like compliance is a potential, and aspirations are a potential, which eventually will be immediately actualized. But they're like a placeholder until the time actually comes. So scrolling down to 2.5, I show more detail how this dynamic takes place. Solicitousness approval is 2.5, similar to the diagram. And then scrolling down further to 2.6, I give a lot of examples here. Desire, aspiration. That's the stage B in the diagram. And here I give an example of the personal authority interacting with the personal follower, like in a workplace example, where there's no negative reinforcement. It's all, if you do your job, you get a check, coming up. So that's, I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Yes, let's keep scrolling down here. I'll show you the examples here. Here I talk about the recursive correlates of conditioning. And recursion in linguistics involves embedding sequences of a self-similar nature, resulting in a hierarchical structure. This is exactly how it turns out in my model here. This entails recalling past memories, with present consciousness, then employing these memories for imagining or predicting future potentialities. In fact, there's a whole new field called perspective psychology, which is showing that we're a prediction. The mind and the brain are prediction mechanisms. Use your learning from the past and operate within the present to obtain your future goals. And this can also be seen in brain evolution. So here we go. We'll go with negative here, 2.8. Talk about the negative reinforcement. This kind of just reinforces what I've been talking about. So we can kind of scroll through that here. And here we talk about the drills. About negative reinforcement, I talk about the recruit and the drill sergeant. And I also talk about the general and the soldier, and how these are complemented in the figure 2A that we just saw. And so I talk about the phase shift in the time frame dynamic, X, Y, and then following this goes Y, X. So there's nothing difficult to understand about this. I mean, we can only act in the present, and that leads to future consequences. We can't change the past, but we learn from the past, we make models of the past, and this gives us a foundation for the present and the future. So, and then figure 210, I talked about previously, the accessory terms, where we get the empathic interplay, where if the original is if I then you, then the empathic, using these other accessory terms, is if you then I, and it can go back and forth. And this is a way we can communicate, because we don't have access to each other's individual minds. We just have, like I said, an empathic impression of what's going on in the mind of the other. So, and this is going to be a whole separate chapter devoted to this. So then scrolling down here to still talk about the accessory terms, and I should have a diagram coming up showing these. Give you a previews. I'll talk about real expanded format in chapter 7. But here are the accessory terms, and these are basically synonyms, close synonyms of the major virtues. They don't have the pedigree or the prestige of the other, but that's because they come after therein. So here we see similar rise in abstraction, exaltation, bountifulness, blessings, and serenity, which serenity is a synonym of tranquility, blessings, grace, bountifulness, providence. If you're able to compare the two diagrams later on, you can see that they're very closely related, but they really complement each other. Freedom, liberty, see here, benevolence, kindness. I'm just picking out some of the more obvious ones. Some of these terms are not used as commonly as the other ones, but peace, amity, harmony, accordance. These are the big terms in my title also. So we need all these accessory terms in order to really get the master picture there. So let's scroll down to the end of the chapter. Like I said, Daryl said that there might be, I'm definitely sure there's going to be some questions, and I will do my best to answer those. Here you got the authority of follower again. And then here's I go into more depth on the meta perspective. All the big names in the field, like R.D. Laing, he was a very famous psychologist. Paul Watzlawick, and then we'll talk about the meta perspective, and meta. You can go up as high up as 10 levels. So hey, we're third through. We've hit page 49 here. Going on to 214, review of conditioning theory. I try and wrap it all up together.
Can you read it?
The ego and the outer ego states effectively rounds out the description of the personal authority and follower roles. And this serves as the foundation for...
Please read the whole sentence.
Within this, the somewhat technical tone of this introductory chapter proved particularly crucial in terms of clarity and precision. Indeed, a sturdy foundation is crucial to the construction of any higher order conceptual edifice. So this shows exactly how B.F. Skinner's terminology of instrumental conditioning and the instinctual nature that we have can explain all of the higher degree of philosophy and ethics. And here I talk about Skinner's elementary principles of positive and negative enforcement prove well suited to the task, anticipating the more abstract hierarchy of virtues to follow. So here I talk about the two-stage dynamic governing opera conditioning. I'll review that. Here I talk about perspective psychology also, which really proved it to be an inspiration for me. And also let's scroll down to talk about the 10th order hierarchy of meta-abstraction. And I might rightfully question the capacity of the human mind to entertain such a multiplicity of perspectives. But the mind is apparently able to focus in upon the immediately relevant levels, similar to the analogy of climbing a 10-level flight of stairs. The process of rising to the next higher step employs the primacy of the immediately adjoining levels, equal to a span of 3 sequential levels. You have the 2 levels that your feet are on, and then the level that you're going to rise above. So this is really a modest task for the mind. And then, then we get to the schematic definitions for the virtues and the values, where I spell out longhand exactly where the terms are located in the matrix, and also which authority level is being expressed at the time. So here I have an example of of one such interaction. Glory and Prudence. It's probably better to go to let's go back up on page 51 at the bottom of the page. This is the standard format for the definition. Previously, I, as your group authority, have gloriously acted solicitously towards you, which is in the present, in anticipation of your, as personal follower, your approving treatment of me. Okay, so this is like I said, the stage 1, and then going to the higher level in that stage. But now you, as group representative, will prudently act approvingly towards me in response to my gloriously solicitous treatment of you. So you see that here the group representative is in the you role. But that's where the accessory terms come in, where where you can substitute in where it will subjectify the follower role. So this would be, now I as group authority will circumspectively act admiringly towards you in response to your, as group authority, exalted treatment of me. So we see the whole flavors switching, this subjective and the objective. So now I explain that. Let's go down. There's four pages of tables here. Starting here, this is level 1. This was the glory and the prudence interplay right here. Actually, this was the prudence one, because we talked about previously about the glory from up there, and then I hope this shows. Yeah, this is large enough to show up. And so each term has underlying on top in the capital letters is entered down below here as in italics. That's the way to understand that. Each new term enters in, and then as you go to higher levels down below, these more basic terms, they fall out, and the new terms enter in, the beauty and the grace, tranquility, they enter in, and all the lower terms fall out, but they're still applicable. You just got to leave a stable buffer of 2 terms to really get the impact on that. So let's go down to table B1 on page 54. This is the negative reinforcement aspect of that. Exact same format, only just different terms are introduced. If you see in this, look at justice over here. I have honorably acted submissively towards you in anticipation of your lenient treatment. But now you will leniently act in a just fashion. See, that's the group representative, like the jury trial and all that I talk about later. Overruling your honorable treatment of me. So we should really get on to the questions. I think this chapter is pretty much done here. Like I said, this is all in your copy, your printed copy as well. But it's good to look at it again here. This is table A2 on page 54, and then table A3 gets into the where reinforcement goes first. Desirous treatment in anticipation of approachful or procurement behavior from you. And then we see dignity, temperance. These are all big themes in social justice. Let's go up one. Let's go back to the last table here on page. Could you scroll back up on page 54 here? Yes. I wanted to outline that this is where all the social justice terms are here. Equality, and you got truth, free will to some degree, liberty, yeah, that's a big one. And scrolling up, justice, you got honor. I mean, that's just the who's who of causes that us activists are working towards and everything. So this table is really especially dear to me here. Let's scroll down to, and that's negative reinforcement. That's the crucial stuff. Then we got the positive here again. And there's charitable organizations around the world that are doing good for the people. And love is a timeless concept. It's always entering in. I can barely watch a movie without having a theme of love at the end, saving the whole day, you know. So, and then table A4, scroll down. Then we got the negative reinforcement. These are also prominent. Integrity, fortitude. And scrolling down here, decency, wisdom, equanimity. This popular, equanimity is a big term, a theme in the Buddhist tradition and stuff. the road, the path to enlightenment and peace. And like I say, peace and harmony, man. It's just beautiful to see these all fall into place. So let's, at least in my perspective,